All right, the purpose of this video, now that we've gone to here, code.visualstudio.com, and we downloaded Visual Studio IDE for our appropriate Windows or Mac operating system. I don't think I did download. Did I open it yet? I don't think so. So I'm going to open Visual Studio Code like this, and I advise always running it as editor, so we'll do that. Sorry, as administrator. Now I'm going to make a very simple project in Node. And why am I doing this? Well, maybe we should go back and draw some pictures first. All right, Veerpal, you might be aware, maybe at some point you've heard, or maybe this is the first time, that JavaScript is a programming language. Right? JavaScript is a programming language. And that means it can do all the stuff that Python can do. We can write programs, we can have variables, we can have flow of control statements, and so on. Now, JavaScript was originally meant to run in a web browser, right? JavaScript, back at the beginning of the web, lived in a web browser. And it could deal with the browser object model. We're going to learn about that. So H1 tags. And I don't think you've had any HTML. Doesn't matter. I'll cover it right from the beginning. But it learns how to deal with the elements of the browser object model. That's what JavaScript in its infancy, right, when it was a young guy, when it was just like a new college graduate like you're about to be, JavaScript provided APIs. It provided methods for talking to elements in the web browser. It was meant to be a language to sort of bring your web page to life a little bit. But then, after a couple of years, it got really, really powerful, and many people started wanting to learn how to use it and applying it to different problems. So a really smart guy named Ryan Dahl he came up with the idea. He said, wouldn't it be nice if we could run JavaScript at the command line or on the server, and then all the stuff we can do with JavaScript. It's a lightweight, network-aware language, right? It's quick, very quick to develop applications in it. It's a good RAD, rapid application development language. So Dahl asked himself, he said, what would I have to do to be able to run JavaScript at as an operating system process at the command line on the server? And then he figured it out that JavaScript is really Chromium, right? It's a language interpreter called Chromium V8. And in fact, that if you want, people do that in one of my other courses. We actually have the students, they make their own JavaScript by writing a C++ interpreter around Chromium V8, v8.dev. So anyway, we're not going to be getting into that here, but that is where JavaScript comes from. JavaScript is more formally known as ECMAScript, which is the owner of it's the organization, European Computer Manufacturers Association owns the standard. So anyway, what Ryan Dahl came up with, now he said, how do I get Chromium to run at the command line? And he actually used something which is a very common pattern in IT development. He used what's called a mediator or a wrapper pattern. So he took Chromium, which is free and open source, so that wasn't hard, and he wrote a C++ program around it. So when users, like we're going to do now, this is what Node is. So the C++ mediator, this wrapper, it provides APIs. So we are going to now call from the command line, we're going to call methods on Node, and Node is going to return. It's going to give a returned result from our method call. And that's how we run JavaScript at the command line. We're ultimately talking to Chromium. just like we're talking to Chromium over here in the browser. And now in the browser, when you want to talk to HTML elements, you're using the browser object model. Here in Chromium, you're doing something similar, except now there's no browser. So now we must have the console object model. Console object model. That means you can talk to the operating system processes, like the file system, for example, or you can start and end network processes. For example, right, you can make our own web server, we can make our own database server because of the console object model. So anyway, that's what we're going to use right now. I just wanted to take a couple seconds to give you that background, and now we will carry on. It's going to drop this into your lesson plan. All right. So let's make the simplest node program now using the using the console object model. So now I've got Visual Studio Code up and running. So I'm going to make a new file. You don't have to do this right now. Now just look and listen and pay attention. In a couple of minutes, I will, let me just clear all these messages out here. In a couple of minutes, I'll give you some lab time to do this by yourself. So now I'm going to say File, New File. I'll just call it First or something. Doesn't matter what I call it too much. Call it First Node.js. The extension's important. It's good if you call it .js to help the linting system in your editor know what it is. So first node.js. Now here, I'm going to write the simplest program. You remember what was the first program we wrote in Python? It was just hello world, and that was just print f brackets, quotes, hello. So we're going to do something similar, but the console object model does not know about print. It knows about console log. I'm going to make my text a bit bigger here so you can see it more easily. Everything in Visual Studio Code is a property sheet, so if you want to change anything, go to Preferences. Here I'll go to Settings and Text Editor and Font, and I'll make it like, I don't know, 32 or something. And close that property sheet, and now I'll say console.log, say hello. And now I'll save. Now, how do I run a Node.js program? Let's think about that. Well, how did we run a Python program? Oh, here we go. Oh, actually, I forgot to do something important. I forgot to set my directory. And if you run in Visual Studio Code without setting your directory, you're going to get messed up. Fortunately, it's not hard. So I'm going to go now and say File, Open Folder, because Visual Studio Code wants to behave the same in Mac Windows and Linux, so they don't really have registry or any Windows specific stuff. Every operating system has the directory system. So once again, I'm going to say File, Open Folder, and I'll make some folder here. Doesn't matter what it is. I'll go to my C drive, and I will say New Folder, Lab, _ Node. I guess that's good enough. And I'll say Select Folder. Now you see what I had before here is gone. It's I lost my file. Well, there wasn't much to it, but if I would have done a lot of work in it, I'd be kind of upset. So you should always go and start your folder. Now you can see up here at the top. And every time you change folder, it's going to go through this little song and dance of popping up all these welcome messages. So let's close them out. Look here, Birpal.
Yes,
We
sir.
have we have a thing up there that just tells you which directory you're in. So just develop the habit of keeping your eye on that. Now, I'm going to go here and do the same thing. File, new file, first node. .js in this case, and save, and make sure you give an extension of .js, and same as before, console .log, and I'll just say hello. That's like print, right? That's basically print. Save. Now look, do you see the number 1 right there? In fact, let's take a couple of seconds here to get familiar with our new toy. So this bar right here on the left, that gives us access to a lot of different perspectives. So that's the file manager, and that lets us search in files. That is the debugger we'll get to later. Extensions Marketplace. I will show you how you can add extensions to Visual Studio Code. And that's a terminal, lab, and some other stuff we don't really care about too much right now. Oh, that's going to be a big one, which is GitHub, right? That can give us a connection to GitHub. So, carrying on. Now I'm going to save. So the one right there in my file perspective, that that tells me I have one unsaved change. So I'm going to go and do File, Save, and now that's gone away. So now my file is saved. Now how do I run this program? Well, I'm going to go to my terminal, and if for some reason all of these were closed, maybe I closed them and I don't see my terminal, I can go to View, Terminal, and that opens my terminal. Now right here I'm getting a command prompt, actually a PowerShell terminal inside Visual Studio Code. So I'll do dir. There's my file, first node. And now how do I run it? Well, if this was Python, I would have said Python, first node.js. But it's not Python, it's Node. So I'm going to say Node. Node. Enter. And it's saying hello world. All right, Virpal, I'm going to give you a couple of simple exercises to do now, and then I'm going to make you do them by yourself for 10, 15 minutes. Then I'll checkpoint to make sure you did them okay. So first of all, let's now enter a loop, right? Let's see about the concept of for loop, because that's pretty basic in programming. So how do I make a loop? A basic loop always has this formulation. Any language, anywhere, Java, anything. Quiet, listen. So I have a loop, and then I have two execution contexts. So I can put a statement there, and there, and there, and I can put pretty much any statement you like. That looks a lot like the one from Python, doesn't it? But there's a certain standard way we usually do it. Usually this initializes your variable for the loop counter, and this is a comparison that must return true or false, and this can be any other statement. Usually we increment our loop counter variable there. So let's go and do that. So I'm going to say for, how do we turn this off? This isn't turning off. Oh, it's turning off now. For counter equals, we'll start it at 0, and then keep going until counter is 9, basically 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 up till 9. So that'll give us a 10 count. And then we have to increment we have to do something with the counter, because if we don't change it, it'll be a forever loop, right? It'll be an infinite loop. So here I'll say counter equals counter plus 1. So every time I go over this loop, my counter is going to start at 0, and it's going to keep incrementing up. Now here I'm getting a little error because I have not initialized counter yet. So I'll say let counter equals 0, and that's about it. If I run this, it should be okay, though it's not going to do anything. Let's try putting our hello world statement in here. So save. And let's try running that. And not surprisingly, we're seeing hello world coming out 10 times. Now let's put our counter there. And there we see it's outputting the value of the counter. All right, Veerpal, I'm going to give you a little break now. It's coming up on 10 o'clock. We've been going for about an hour. So I'll give you a 10-minute break right here at home. That should be enough time to walk to the kitchen and get a coffee. And then I want you to do what I've done here. At first, I will let you try to do it by yourself, and I'll kick out this video so you can watch the video. Not too much time, right? Maybe just 10 minutes because we have a lot to do.